Okay, so this thing back here adjusts this fence, which isn't locked down because this strip is tapered. And I'm watching how deep it's cutting, and then I'll hit this to open the jaws up a little bit more, open the fence. And I'm making it smaller. So turning this wheel that way pulls the fence forward. So you can see how well this is beveled as the taper goes. And then tapers back down. I start out, the fence is further back, so I'm freehanding this until it makes contact with the fence. And the friction will increase when it hits the fence. Right there, it hit the fence. Then I open the fence. And I open the fence. And I open the fence. Now I'm moving the fence. Each one of these bumps is about a 64th of an inch. Then I'm just going to freehand the last 18 inches or so. So just to show you, this taper goes from a very small amount. You can see I beveled it at 30 degrees on both sides. This is why I do it this way. And going back down on the other feather. You can see how the taper is consistent and the bevel is consistent as I can make it going down. This is veg tan cowhide, color's gold. Here's a new strip needing beveled. When it starts binding up with the fence, I know I've reached the fence width. Then I knock it back, take the tension off. And each one of these little finger bumps up here, I'm moving this wheel a 64th of an inch. The fence moves back. I'm trying not to change the width of the strip, just trying to bevel the edge of it perfectly, or close to perfectly. And if you pick up any of the color on the chaff, it means that you are resizing the width of the strip. So you want to be just barely below that. Now I'm going to move it this way, which brings the fence back in a 64th of an inch for each little wheel hit. just freehand this. Turn it around and freehand it until it engages the fence. Now the fence is engaged, still hasn't cut through the top surface. And then I'm going to, because it's getting bigger, I'm going to open it up by loosening the fence. Every 3 or 4 inches. Now I'm bringing it in as I go every few inches. I'm going to freehand the last 18 inches. So you can see that it's beveled. You can see how consistent the taper is on the strip. And then going back down. And that's the reason I'm doing it this way, is I can control the bevel and the taper better. I'm throwing the strip I'm working at in the bucket, which keeps the dog hair off of it. Doesn't keep the leather dust off of it. I'm going to freehand start it for about 18 inches until the fence engages. Once the fence engages, you can tell the tension on this tool. It starts dragging, and so you kick this wheel back to give it a little more That way you don't cut through to the skin side. But every few inches you have to loosen it as you go up the taper. And see how this is starting to chatter up and down? That means the blade is getting dull. Now I'm tightening the fence in as the strip tapers by 64ths of an inch. And the last 18 inches, I'm just going to freehand. Now the first 15 inches or 18 inches, I'll freehand until it engages the fence again. Now it's rubbing the fence again. So I'm going to open the fence a little bit. And you can watch the offcut to see when you need to hit the thumb wheel. Now I'm going to move it to 64th of an inch every time I move this wheel to follow the contour of the taper. When you start seeing it jump up and down, it means that the blade is getting dull. I'm going to freehand the rest of this. Then you can see as you pull it through, you can see it get wider, but the taper is consistent at 30-degree bevel. Once you get up here, then the taper and the bevel goes back down on the other feather. And then you get a new strip that isn't beveled. So then I freehand the first 18 inches or so until it engages the fence. What you want is a consistent worm of offcut, telling you that you're peeling consistently until it engages the rail. And you'll feel the friction slow you down when you hit the rail with the width. And so there I'm engaging the rail, or starting to engage the rail. And then you move it a 64th back. Now that it's starting to taper back down the other side, so you have to go the other direction by 64ths of an inch. I moved it the wrong way. So moving it to the left brings the fence closer by a 64th, roughly. And it's starting to chatter. And for the last 18 inches, I'll just freehand it. And move the blade up. And you'll notice there's a little bit of black right here. That's where I painted it with a Sharpie before I started using this blade. So you can tell what areas have been used for cutting leather. I'm going to go back to freehanding this. And you just want that worm of offcut to be consistently wide until it engages the fence. Okay, now it's engaging the fence. Open the fence a little bit. Open the fence a little bit. Now we're bringing the fence in by 64ths. The last 20 inches or 18 inches, I'm just going to freehand and keep the worm coming off consistent. You can see how consistent the taper is in the beveling. It's beveled at 30 degrees. This is veg tan cowhide. Tapering back down on the other side. Part of that is how well I cut the feather to start with, and part of it is how well it got beveled when I was doing this part. You can never get it perfect enough, or you can never get it perfect. You can get it close enough that you're happy with it, and that's where you should stop, because perfection's not achievable, and you can strive for it. Catching it is very hard. Okay, I'm going to change the whole blade. So you can see the middle of the blade didn't get used. This is a carpet blade, double-sided. These things are wicked. I don't suggest doing what I do and using this on this tool. There are better blades to use for this tool. But these are amazingly sharp carpet blades. And this is the tip of the day or tip of the week. So if you take a Sharpie and you run a ink the bevel at the very least. That one's getting dry. flip the blade and do it again. And this will just tell you if you've used that part of the blade. It's like an indicator. It'll save you tons of headaches and let you use as much of the sharp surface of the blade as you can. A little more blade than that. And then you want to keep the little offcut consistent once you find the depth of the bevel you want. And once it starts engaging the fence, then you can use the fence as a guide. You'll know because there'll be friction between the string, the fence, and the blade. Now it's engaging the fence, and you can bump the fence back to by a 64th. And notice there's no gold on this offcut. So I'm not changing the width of the taper I set up. So the first 9 inches are the same width at about half an inch, and then you have to bump the fence in by 64ths for another 6 inches. And then it goes to in again, and in again, and then in again. When you see the offcut change, it means that you gotta adjust it. And you're just snugging the fence up to it to help it flow. Okay, I've got about 18 inches, and I'm just going to freehand this all the way to the end. freehanding it until it engages the fence and adds some friction. And it'll start to drag right about there. You can also look where the flesh side is being trimmed to make sure that you're not tripping the colorful side, but take the tension off the fence by a 64th. Tension off the fence. So you're bumping the fence guide back every few inches as you go to stay right where you should be on the bevel. Now we're going to be tightening the fence to stay in the right place on the taper. Get down to the last 18 inches or so. You just freehand it and watch the worm to make sure you're staying in the same edge for consistency. And then you can, so that's the skin side that's gold painted, and then as you pull it through, you can watch both the taper and the bevels. Make sure there's nothing not you want it really consistent. It's about as consistent as I can make it. And then as it goes down the other side, you can see it. Who makes the beveler? The beveler is made by Y-Knot. There's a company. It's called a combination beveler. Company's in Montana. It's kind of a smaller version of like this kind of a beveler, which I use for rawhide. But this beveler is a Y-Knot combination beveler. It's about $250. It's not terribly expensive. If you need one, they're fantastic. Okay, I've got a fresh feather. I'm moving the blade up. You see how you can see the Sharpie in this area, and it's polished the Sharpie off where I was using it. Bend up these blades just a touch, or you can run the feather through, either one. But I typically will freehand this for like 18 inches until it engages. And I don't recommend this particular double-edged blades. It's just what I use because there's twice as much cutting surface as as a, or 3 times as much cutting area as a schick blade. Okay, so I'm going to release the tension and back it off a 64th of an inch at a time. This little guy will do rawhide as well, and it comes with a 45-degree tension, a 45-degree beveler as well as a resizer. But rawhide you typically bevel off the top side, the skin side, instead of the flesh side. Then now I have to tension the fence back up, and then you have to keep bumping it to keep the rail or the fence against the piece on a taper. But you can incrementally, each one of these little hits is about a 64th of an inch. And I cut these tapered to start with. But then trying to bevel them after you've made the tapered feathers is a whole thing. I used to do it by hand with a credit card and a razor blade. But you can be even more consistent using a tool like this if you pay attention to what you're doing. Plus, you don't trip over things with a sharp blade in your hand and land on the mud or land on the ground. The last 18 inches, I'm going to freehand this. And you're going to freehand this for till it engages the fence, till it gets wide enough to where the fence is. And you're just watching the offcut to make sure it's consistent and allowing the strand to drift until it rubs. Once it starts rubbing, you'll get tension on this and it'll be harder to pull, and you need to release the tension. Release the tension. Release the tension. And now we're not cutting enough, so we're going to back up, add some tension. Release some tension. There's different things you can watch, but and listen to the blade. It'll tell you when it's getting dull, plus the offcut will chatter up and down. As it's getting dull. And by dull, I mean it's not staying perfectly where you want it. It'll cut for a very long time after you call it dull. And now you're bumping it in by 64ths as the taper goes down. And you can watch how consistent the offcut is to give you an idea as to when to do it. Then the last 18 inches or so you can freehand and watch the offcut. You can see the bevel on the strand and how the taper goes up, but the bevel stays right where it should. And how consistent you can make your tapers and your bevels will show in the end product of what you're doing. Now I've got some longer feathers that need doing. These are about 7 feet long. These are for like a 4.5, 5 foot snake whip or bull whip. I'm waiting for this to engage the fence and kind of come up with friction. I'm going to release the tension. And I keep it in the bucket because it keeps the dog hair from sticking to the flesh side. Because the pup likes to come and sit. Now I've got to make it come together. Can zoom out a little bit. And again, one of the most important things is to watch how the offcut goes. And try and keep it consistent because you want a consistent bevel down this whole thing. And then when you get down to the last 18 inches or so, just freehand it, watching that strip. And freehand it until it engages the fence. I can freehand this whole thing, but the fence allows you to kind of see how the taper is and sort of measure it against the fence and the movement of the fence. And it takes less concentration. Whoops. Now we're going down in taper, so we have to keep tensioning it back up. And I'm going to peel the rest of this 18-20 inches freehand. Then you can, if I can get it to stop, you can see both the bevel and the change in width of the strand. You can see how it's got a 30-degree bevel on both sides as it goes up, and then as it comes back down, you can see how consistent it is. And the more consistent you can make things, the better the end result is. The same thing. I'm trying to make the point of the blade match where the skin side meets the flesh side, and then follow that worm so that when I'm drawing it through consistently until it hits the fence, I've got a consistent offcut width. And once it engages the rail, the friction will slow it down. Also, if you go a little bit too far, you can see it turn white right here, which means you're cutting through the very top layer, but it's still not gold. So that's where you release the tension and widen it up by a 64th. And I'm obsessive with trying to keep things as consistent as I can. I attempt to work in thousandths of an inch instead of hundredths of an inch in leather, which is insane because the material stretches and fights you and swirls out of the way. It's like the difference between carpentry and woodworking. So after 7 inches to 9 inches, which this is about 9 inches, is where I bumped down the strands for another 7 inches or 8 inches. And then I bumped them down again when I made them. And then it went down to 6 every 6 inches, and then every 5 inches, 4 inches. Then I'm going to peel the last of this taper off, just watching the offcut as it drops to basically nothing. And then I'm just peeling it until it engages the fence. You can also check the center line to see how close the center line is to where you want it. Got something on the lens. Probably leather dust. Now maybe I can get it to stay focused. It hasn't quite engaged the fence yet. It'll get there in a minute. These are 7-foot strips or 7.5-foot strips. Taper down to an 1/8. Now it's engaged the fence. about 9 inches. And then I can start bumping it tighter by a 64th for another 8 inches, a little bit tighter. So you can re-bevel with this tool if you need to. You bring it back to this tool. And the last 18 inches all freehand. I'm not on the rail. You can see how it advances in width, but you have a consistent bevel as the metal gets wider. And you can see if there's any imperfections in both the bevel or the tapering by running it through your fingers like this. Move the blade up, get a fresh little 1/8 inch of blade. This is veg tanned cowhide. It's, in this case, it's for a ceremonial whip, so I made it gold. I'm going to freehand this until I get the fence to engage. It's important to keep the tension as consistent as possible when you're stripping a bevel. And once it starts engaging the fence, it'll bind up a little bit and you release the tension a 64th of an inch at a time. Right. And after about 9 inches is where I bump this down. So I'm going to make it narrower by 64th every little bit. And the last 18 or 20 inches, I'll freehand this. And then I'm going to hand bevel this. And just try and keep the offcut width and size of the triangle consistent until it makes contact with the fence and it slows down and binds up. Now it's starting to bind up. So then you have to release the tension a 64th of an inch at a time. Alright, and then the first 9 inches are consistent, and then it starts tapering. You have to taper with it and bring the fins in because it's tapering down. Okay, then I'm going to freehand the last 20 inches, keeping that offcut consistent and the attack angle and the tension. And then you can double check it and watch the taper and the bevel get wider all the way to half an inch, and then from half an inch all the way back down to nothing. And I've got one more feather, a double feather here. So I'm going to move it up again because it was starting to get a little dull. And then you're going to peel this until it engages the fence. This is 4 5-ounce veg tin. Now this paint is not flesh side. If you pull on it, it'll come apart. This paint is on the edge of the strip. I'm not sure if I can slide this under the blade, but I guess I can. Wasn't sure if I could do that. Go 8 or 9 inches, start tightening the fence back up, moving it a 64th at a time. Last 20 inches, I'm just going to bevel. Keep that peeling at a consistent thing as the thing narrows down. You can see my fingers kind of red and shiny. It's because it's been polished by leather today. And once you set the bevel, you want to peel it as consistently as possible until that fence engages. Because I'm freehanding this. Once it starts rubbing against the fence, it'll be at a set width. So it's about 20 inches, about the same as the other side. Got 9 inches. Start tightening it up as the taper drops. And the last 20 inches I'll freehand. So I'm not using the fence. I'm watching the worm and changing the attack angle and tension. Then you can double check how the bevel is and how the taper changes by watching the spine and the width as it goes up to 1/2 inch. It chattered a little bit through here because I got a little bit too tight. And when you get up in this area, it's all going to get cut off on a snake whip. And then you'll see it taper back down with the bevels. So I've been working for an hour and 35 minutes and have managed not to cut myself, which is good. But it also means I'm done with what I'm doing for right now. and I need to take a break because my concentration is only good for about an hour and a half. It's been a pleasure sharing what I do with you guys. Thank you very much, and subscribe to the channel if you're interested. I don't do as much braiding anymore, but I've been cutting a lot of string and prepping stuff and figuring out what I want to do because there's not enough. None. I have more work than one person can do if I want it, but it's hard on the body. You have a great night, and ask any questions you have. Thanks a lot.